Greg left his trash.
That's not trash.
Greg left his bullet. Good morning. All right, I want you to think of something big. It can be anything. So, in the world of things being big, Indiana is home to one of the most obscure big objects. Alexandria, Indiana is home to the world's largest ball of paint. Which, I don't know if he's moved it, but it was hanging from like the ceiling in a guy's basement. The world's largest ball of paint. So he took a bouncy ball, put a screw in it, hung it, and then just put a coat of paint on it continuously. And now it's like a big wrecking ball of just paint. But Guinness said it's the world's largest. Oh, okay. I did not know that. So yeah, you can add to it. So today's message is also brought to you by Indiana Tourism. So when it comes to big things, something that I often think of is when I went to New York City with my grandparents. And I remember standing there, like amongst all these really tall buildings. And here in Indiana, where the ground is flat and about the tallest thing around is a corn stalk, looking up, the tops of the buildings are so far up there, and everywhere you look, you do a 360, and it's like the sky up there. The buildings are just so big, it's bizarre. But when we think of big, something else that always comes to my mind is when you are standing on the shore, or if you're even on a boat, but you're near a big, big body of water, and you get that kind of illusion that the water is higher than the ground you're standing on almost, because there's just so much of it and it goes so far in the distance. It's so mesmerizing that it's just so big. And I mean, whenever I see that, I often think of God, because it's like, how on earth is this possible? Because it's just so big. And it's like, oh, God did that. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about how nothing compares to God when it comes to big. So we're going to talk about a couple aspects of God. And the first one is the fact that God is everywhere. In Psalm chapter 139, verses 7 through 10 says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the dawn, if I dwell in the remotest parts of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand will lay hold of me." This was written by David, who did a lot of things that he probably wishes God wouldn't have been there for. But he was acknowledging the fact that God is everywhere. He sees everything I'm doing. That didn't stop him from being imperfect. It didn't stop him from being human. But he was able to rightfully acknowledge that God is everywhere. He could go to the highest of highs, the lowest of lows. He could be alone in his house, or he could be out in public in the marketplace. He could be anywhere. God is still there. John Wooden said, one of the most quotable men ever, but he said, "The true test of a man's character is what he does when no one is watching." A person of true character is always going to be doing the right thing. They're not going to be skimming from the tip jar or doing whatever. They're always going to be honest in all things they do, because there's a lot of times we're not being held accountable. David, being in a powerful position, didn't have to be held accountable by a whole lot of people. So he made a lot of mistakes, even though God was there watching him and could be one to hold him accountable. We can't be everywhere, but a lot of times we like to try to be everywhere. I know there have been times, for example, if you get together with friends to watch Super Bowl or a sports game or movie or something, whatever, somebody is almost always on their phone. So I've been guilty of that myself, being the one on the phone. But when you're doing this, you're trying to be present in the room. You're trying to be present in whatever's on the screen, but then you're also trying to be present to the world on your little screen in front of you. Unfortunately, even though we like to think that we're being present everywhere in all three of those, we're not. We're only present in one of those things, me. But this is where God shows how big that He is. He can be everywhere with every one of us. He's in this room right now. He's out there keeping an eye on those guys out there in the foyer. He's in the junior church keeping an eye on those kids, making sure that they don't break Greg and Teresa. He's everywhere. He's even at home with the people who end up watching this on YouTube or Facebook, which will be on both places, for sure. But God is everywhere. We can't be everywhere. So this is one aspect that really makes Him so much bigger than we can even be or even can imagine. A second aspect that shows how big God really is God is all-powerful. Last week in junior church, if Jackson was in here, I'd make him get up here and I'd question him, put him on the hot seat. If only we could take our camera in there and go remote on location, put him in the hot seat and say, what did you learn last week? But we were talking about the plagues upon Egypt. And in this story, Pharaoh has all of the Israelites captive and in slavery. He's given the message from Moses, God says, let my people go. What does Pharaoh do? He says, we're not doing that. So, it ends up taking 10 plagues for him to actually decide and finally listen to God. And really, he doesn't even end up listening to God. He's just like, you guys are causing me too much trouble, get out of here. But in Exodus chapters 7 through 12, we have the plagues of the water turning to blood, frogs, gnats, flies, livestock dying, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and death of the firstborn. I don't think any of us can do any of these things. Because if somebody in here can turn a river to blood, I want to see it. That'd be kind of cool. But, I mean, we have a tough enough time with bug spray, keeping bugs away. Can you imagine controlling the bugs, like all the flies, and saying, attack Donna? One can wish, right? But all of these things God used for His people. I can't control the flies. I can't control the gnats. I can't make it be dark when I go outside, even though I kind of want to sometimes in the summer because I get burnt very quickly. I can't control darkness. I can't control locusts. I can't walk by a cow pasture and say, die. It just falls over. I can't do that. Heck, I can't even push a cow. But all of these things, God can do. And in fact, God did do. If you open up your Bible and just pick a page, odds are there's a good chance you're coming across something crazy that God did that you and I couldn't do. There's a chance we could do it, but the only way we would do it is because God intervened. So the third thing that I want to talk about that shows how big God is the fact that He is all-loving. In 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 8, it says, above all, keep fervent above all, keep fervent in your love for one another, because love covers a multitude of sins. This is actually quoting Proverbs chapter 10, verse 12. And I really enjoyed what the footnote said for Proverbs chapter 10, verse 12. It says, true love seeks the highest good for one another. It is really hard to always want the best for everybody. When somebody cuts you off in traffic, we were talking about driving in Sunday school a little bit. When somebody cuts you off in traffic, you kind of want to be like, I hope you pop a tire. I hope you're okay, but I hope you pop a tire, something like that. Shame on me for thinking that. But we're not always thinking the best for everybody. It's really hard. And in our world where love isn't necessarily a virtue that is the love that we have from Christ, it's not necessarily something that's widespread, it's not something that we're even good at. But we have this love, this way that we can love other people that is unlike anything that most people know. When we're talking about love covering a multitude of sins, this is a pretty bizarre concept, a very foreign concept, and this is only made possible by the table here, by the sacrifice that Christ made on the cross. When we take our communion every week, that's what we're remembering, is God showed us the ultimate form of love. And this ultimate form of love was so big and so powerful that it covered every sin in the world. It covered all of us. It covered things that we couldn't even imagine. And even though we might try to be all loving and want to be all loving, it's not possible for us. It's not in our nature. But again, there is one out there who is all loving and can be all loving, and that's God. So with these three things that we have here that we just discussed, we have God is everywhere, we have God is all powerful, and God is all loving. All three of these things are so big that we can't really even comprehend all of them. But in God's nature, we can live with those, and we can understand those, and we can experience them. So to wrap all of this up, if you have ever seen the movie Big with Tom Hanks, it's a really good movie. There's a 12-year-old kid, and he just really longs to be big. He wants to grow up, he wants to be an adult, he's tired of being a kid. So he's at I'm sorry if I'm giving this away, a little bit of spoiler, so just plug your ears if you're going to watch it this afternoon. But you'll miss my point. So he goes to this carnival, and there happens to be this little fortune teller machine, and he uses it, and he says, I want to be big. And the next day, he wakes up as a 30-year-old man. So he experiences life as a 30-year-old man, and at first he thinks he loves it. He goes out, does all sorts of crazy things, gets a job at a toy company, and is just loving life. But eventually, he's starting to see the struggles. He gets overwhelmed. He doesn't know how to deal with these things. There's so much stress in his life. He just gives up, basically. So he eventually tracks down this fortune-telling machine and wishes to be little again. And the movie ends with him going back to being the 12-year-old kid once again. But we are often like this sometimes. We want to be bigger than we can possibly be. We want to be bigger than we are capable of being. We want to be like God. We want to be everywhere. We want to be all powerful. We want to be all loving, but we can't. These are things that God can do, but we can't. So, these longings that we have, when we lean on God, we are able to experience these things and have these things in our life. But the pressure is not on us to be everywhere. The pressure is not on us to be all powerful, all loving. God can do these things. We can't. So, as we close today, if you are here and not made the decision to accept that God is bigger than us and that we are in need of Him and His love, come forward during our invitation today. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you so much for sending your Son, Jesus, to die on the cross for us. God, we know that the things that you have done and the things that you continue to do to this day are things that we could never possibly do ourselves. And God, we just thank you so much for sharing your love with us and reaching out to us so that we can experience you. God, we love you.